I'm visiting San Francisco now, and it's really confusing to get around here. Lots of streets and lots of stuff going on, and I'm from Cleveland. Things are just a little quieter over there. So to avoid getting lost, I've been using a map, and that way I always know exactly where I'm going. How does this relate to reading? Well, when you read, we're going to talk about how you want to mark up, make kind of a roadmap for yourself so you don't get lost and bogged down in the details in the passages. In this episode, we're going to talk about some great strategies for how to tackle the passages, and then we'll practice with a real passage. Hi, welcome to Reading Strategies, the passages. Now, in the pacing episode, we talked about some general pacing strategies for the reading section. In this episode, I want to really dig into the passages and talk about exactly what you need to look for on the passages on the test so you can nail the questions. But first, two really important things. First of all, I want you to watch this episode with the next episode together in one sitting. Let me tell you why. In this episode, we're going to go through the passages and some really good strategies for reading them and what to look for. But it's the next episode where we'll talk about the question types, things like eliminating wrong answer choices, and then we'll answer the questions that go with the passage that we're going to look at right now. So I don't want to leave you hanging. Try to make a commitment to watch both episodes at the same time. Next important thing, print out the passage that goes with this episode right now before you keep going. You know, I'll have chunks up here as we go through it, but it's not the same as having the whole thing in front of you and just circling it and going through it and reading it how you would read it on a real reading test. So before we start, make a commitment to watch this episode with the next episode and print out the passage that goes with the episode. So let's get started looking at some general strategies for the reading. First of all, we talked about this a little bit when we did pacing. Don't read the passages in order. Remember, we talked about how you're going to want to read them in the order that feels most comfortable to you. Let's say you're more of a natural sciences person, make sure you read that passage first. And the cool thing about the ACT, remember, it's really predictable, so you'll know exactly what order the passages are going to go in. Skip around, find your favorite passages, do those first while you feel really fresh and really feel good and you can get those questions. And then leave the passages that you're not as crazy about, leave those for the end when you're getting really cranky, when time is running out. And you probably won't do that well on them anyway because they're not your favorites. So you're going to want to go in order of your preference, not in the order that the passages appear. Next, mark up your passage. There is nothing worse on the reading section than a naked passage. You want to mark all over it. And we'll talk on this episode about exactly what to look for so that you can answer the questions effectively. Next, don't worry about the details. Students always ask me, there's so many details here, what do I need to know? It's really complicated, and the passage is so full of just lots of complex details. Don't worry about the details at all. A cool thing about the ACT is that there are a lot of questions that test detail, but they're usually line reference numbers on those questions. So if you need a detail, you'll know exactly where to look in the passage for the detail most of the time. So instead of focusing on the details, don't worry about them at all. Just make a note, there's some details here, and instead, you're going to want to be a macro reader. You want to think the big picture. What's the author's overall purpose here? What's the main idea? So in this episode, we'll talk about some strategies so you can really just pull the main idea out of these really long, complex passages. But first, let's just look at a quick look at the format, just so you have an idea of what it looks like. We did talk about this earlier when we did the intro, so I'm just going to rush through this. Remember, each of the 4 passages is about 750 words long. There's 10 questions of mixed difficulty on each passage.